No. Right. Good evening from the UK. Got Laurie to this. Tonight, I'm finally back. Tonight, I've got a really special guest tonight. Jennifer Fraser. She's an award-winning teacher and an author, a researcher, and her present interest is in taking the language of neuroscience and applying it to the challenges in our lives, such as bullying and abuse. Welcome, Jenny.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for having me. It's so nice to chat with you.
You're most welcome. How would you like to prefer, Jennifer or Jenny?
You know what? I go by pretty much anything. My brother calls me Jenny. My sister calls me JJ. My students, they call me all kinds of things. So yeah, I'm good with all of it.
Fantastic. I brought you on because obviously the biggest stigma today isn't COVID-19. It's mental health and mental illness. And it's not getting spoken about enough. I like, which highlighted me with your bio is the bullying and abuse, because I've suffered with both growing up. And I believe there's people out there who are still suffering in silence, more living in silence rather than suffering, and we need to find a way to actually get them talking. The question is how.
So it's interesting. I was recently reading a book by a neuroscientist named Sarah Jane Blakemore. And she was talking about research that they did into 2-year-olds or kids that were between the ages of 1 and 2. And the researchers, what they were trying to do is look at the ways in which different children behaved when they saw another child crying. So let's say, your researchers are behind the glass door. Of course, they can't create lab-like conditions because there's no way we would ever abuse a child to research what does abuse do to the child, of course. But they knew specifically that a number of these children had been abused. And they're just little ones, toddlers. And so they wanted to see, okay, well, how does a child who comes from a safe, loving home, how does that child respond to crying versus a toddler? So we're talking 1, 2 years old who comes from an abusive home environment. And what they found was, which it's really common sense if you think about it, but it's really important to hear it from the brain research people. What they saw was children who came from a home that was safe and loving, they responded to the child's crying with compassion.
Yeah.
They wanted to help the child. They put their arm around the child. They tried to soothe the child's tears. They were empathic. They could see this child was suffering and they wanted to help. In contrast, the children who came from abusive environments got very overstimulated. Initially, they might begin with a caring gesture, but it quickly changed into anger. And so these little 1 and 2-year-olds would stop it. Or so the reason I take the time to talk about that research is I want to make it very clear that for many of us, when things have been done to us when we were growing up as children, it can change our natural ways of behaving.
Yeah.
We might have been born, all children are born completely wired with empathy and compassion and care, because these are the things that allow a baby to survive in society, of course. They have to be able to understand what are the powerful people, what are the adults, what are the older siblings, what are the grandparents, what's going on in their brains, and how can I imitate and relate and understand them? That's how I will survive, because I will become part of this community. So when someone becomes a person who is very abusive, or someone becomes someone who uses a lot of bullying, you really have to look at that person and understand, not that it's okay, not that you forgive it or allow it to happen, absolutely not. But you do need to understand that that person has a very hurt, damaged brain. And they must have suffered a lot of that type of treatment themselves for them to be reenacting it in their own lives. And I mean, this is where we really need to jump in and tackle had a broken arm, I would have nothing. Why would I be ashamed of that? My arm is broken, and it got broken because I fell or somebody broke my arm. Same thing with your brain. If somebody, when you were a toddler, was so abusive to you that they broke your brain, well, what's to be embarrassed about? That's just a fact. It's like being embarrassed about having diabetes or being embarrassed about having a heart condition. You've got something going off that's not quite right with your brain. Once you get that out in the open, then the help comes in. Then you can start to work on it.
Yeah, so how would you look at me, for example? Because the first time I was abused was 3 years old when I was punched in the face because of my disability, because I couldn't ride a bike. And then for 16 years after that, every single day my daily routine was being bullied, beaten at home and in the education system. So how would you see me like that? Because I've turned my life around now and I'm loving it.
So you just answered the question yourself. Because you have openly been able to separate out from what was done to you, you don't think you deserved it. You don't believe that that's a way to work with children or raise them or care for them. You see that as outside. That's like watching a war. If you grew up in war-torn Syria, you wouldn't internalize that. You would see that as a war outside. That's what you've done with the abuse that was done to you. You haven't internalized it. You're not repeating it. In fact, you've drawn a very clear line between that was done to me. It has nothing to do with who I am, with my potential, with my hopes and dreams, and with how I want to be with my children.
Absolutely.
So you just shut the door on it. And that's why you feel so good. And I'm not saying it's easy, because I imagine you've worked very hard to shut that door.
I have, because obviously just March last year, I attempted suicide because of it, because of the trauma I suffered growing up. And it got too much for me because me being bullied, I believed it was my fault. Me being put on a child protection plan because of domestic violence, that was my fault. Me being abused by parents, siblings, people at school, that was my fault. And I believed that for 16 years. As soon as I turned 25 years old, I realised I gave myself a bit of a reality check. I believe this wasn't my fault. I didn't deserve any of that. And now I'm a father myself, and I was allowed to be bullied. But if I find out they're being bullied, I do something about it. Like, even my partner doesn't like it when I turn into protective mode over my kids. To be honest, I don't really care. My mind and my life are with those kids, and I'll do anything in my power to protect them, like any father or mother would do.
Well, no, there are fathers and mothers out there who have lost their own backbone, who've lost their own clear sense of what's right and wrong, that are too afraid to speak up, that they're so kind of taken away from natural instinctual parenting that they might have lost some of that, which is it's really sad, but it does happen. You know, like you're saying, you yourself came from a home where parenting got derailed. It wasn't loving, it wasn't protective, it wasn't what you needed growing up. But the beautiful thing is, as you've just articulated, I mean, when we do become adults and we're no longer vulnerable as children and we're no longer dependent, the moment we become adults and we take on the decision to create our own lives and be our own people, the beautiful thing is, even if your brain was badly hurt when you were growing up, you have what's called, as I'm sure you know, neuroplasticity. And this has been quite a recent discovery with the neuroscientists, that the people that study brains, they've learned that they used to think that the brain was like hardwired. It was like a machine. You were born with it. You were smart. You were dumb. You had an IQ like this. You had the potential to do that. That's how they thought the brain was. Yeah. Well, they now know that that's completely inaccurate. The brain actually has the capacity to grow and change and develop and create whole new networks right until the very last day you are on the planet. And it's really intensively powerful, especially it can change greatly from 13 to 25. After 25, you truly have a fully adult, mature brain. So that's what you have right now. And maybe it's also why you're starting to feel better, because the teenage years are tough because there's a lot of brain development.
Oh yeah.
You're now in the adult mode, and you're saying, this is who I'm going to be. This is what my life will look like. This is how I see myself, and this is how I'm going to protect my kids.
Yeah, you see, I've had people coming up to me and they say, yeah, don't forget, but forgive the abusers for what they did. Well, I'll never forget and I'll never forgive. But what I will do is actually tell these abusers, thank you, because they've actually turned me into a person I actually want to be. Because 12 months ago, I was saying, I hate my life. Yeah, it's been a really roller coaster in getting up that mountain to turn my life around. But now I'm at the top. I'm living my dream and speaking about mental health, one of the biggest stigmas in the entire world. And I've got people messaging me non-stop. Even just now, they're messaging me asking for my help, but they can just wait. But I know that's a bit, because lives are at risk every single day during these pandemic. But speaking of the pandemic, mental health suicide's actually gone on the increase, especially with young teenagers. How would you see that, us getting out of that?
Well, I don't know if you've seen my TED talk, my TEDx talk, but I've been very focused on suicide because a student of mine who I was very, very close to, she had left high school. She had reported to me in high school that she was being abused by a teacher. Yeah. And she graduated with the top top grades on the exams, international exams. And then she attempted suicide, and she was in hospital for 2 weeks. Then she came out, and then she went to university in the fall. And I really felt that her life was ahead of her. She's this wonderful person, just the loveliest person you've ever met. And I believed that she was going to be okay. We emailed back and forth frequently because she was struggling so much with the mental health side of it. She felt, as you're describing, and children do, this is the most tragic part, they oftentimes blame themselves when adults are abusive. They think it's their fault. They think they deserved it. They feel guilty for reporting. Children get very, very confused when adults are abusive because it doesn't make sense to their brains, of course. Yeah. So here she is, this intellectually gifted, brilliant person, and she struggled with the mental health. And so she took her life on November 21st, 2017. And so for me, really, really hurt a lot. So my way of coping your way of coping, I can see, is to create community and to speak and to share, like you just beam joy and so on. You really do, and care, like you want to help people.
I do.
You do. It's so clear. My way of coping when things are terrible like that is I write. So basically, I just poured myself into trying to figure out, with the written word, with storytelling, with books I know, I was like, tried to get to the heart of how could this happen? How could I have failed to keep her safe, along with her dear friends and family. And I just felt that really strong sense that I had failed her. So when you ask me about suicide, all I want to do is I want to take all those kids and say to them, don't get stuck in your head. You've got to listen. You've got to get out there, listen to TED Talks, listen to speakers on mental health, reach out to all your friends, go to your trusted adults in your world, call up that teacher, call that coach, call your grandma. Like, just, you cannot be caught up in this tape loop that goes on while your brain is undergoing significant development. It's overwhelming, the teenage years for brain development. And we treat them like they're adults, but they're not. They're just kids.
I know they're still developing. But I know like 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, and yeah, they've got big attitude, but don't all teenagers. It's like they're still getting used to life. They're still kids themselves, still babies themselves. And how people are treating them these days is just absolutely sickening. Like I keep saying it, and I've been judged on this and I've been praised on it, what I'll say. But I believe we live in a sexist, divided, discriminating, racist world.
Looking at the riots right now in the United States, it certainly feels that way. It feels like we've really lost our way as a society on a number of fronts. I know. You know, it's interesting. One of the things, I've actually put a course together. I put a course together that's free. It's online. After we talk, I'm going to send you a link to it. But it basically is for students. I say students or children. It's for them to understand. It's for them to just have some knowledge about adults who are abusive, because I feel like the adults in the world are so afraid of talking about this. It's so taboo. You know, we don't say to
mainly men.
Yes, we don't say to a child, we say, oh, if you're being bullied, go tell the teacher. That's fine. But we never say to a kid, you know what? Sometimes, not often, most teachers are fabulous, but sometimes there might be a teacher or a doctor or a coach who's very, very abusive. You might have an abusive individual in your house, in your family. And we need to keep getting this message. Frozen. You're still frozen for me.
No. I'm back. I'm here.
Did I freeze for you? Yeah, you did too. We had like a 30-second freeze. All I was going to say is I've put this online course together. It's videos, it's text if they want to read it. It's just a short course for young people. It's just to tell them, you know, you need to know that sometimes adults are abusive. These are the kinds of things you can do. And then, you know, the really bad news, which is sometimes the system is not going to be supportive of you. Sometimes the system itself is what's the problem. And so you need to be strong. You got to be ready for that. So.
Totally understand that, because obviously 2 years ago, I think I told you this off the phone, I can't remember now, but when I approached the NHS and I was outside the hospital in an ambulance, and I had a seatbelt wrapped around my neck, and the NHS they fobbed me off, and they didn't think I was unstable enough. And this was due to how I've been treated by the system and the trauma all in one. And they made me walk on. They didn't offer no support or anything, even though I begged them I wanted to be sectioned. I begged them. But no, they didn't take me. But I feel like I'm not speaking for everybody. I'm speaking from my experience, because my life could have been different to others. NHS could help them. They didn't help me. But friends and family, my own family, they helped me turn my life around. And I always say to people, I think it's my own saying, but I don't know. Somebody probably has come up with this quote, but everyone who's suffering with mental health or mental illness, you're in a dark tunnel and you feel pain, and that's understandable. That's okay. But there's always light at the end of a tunnel, and there's always someone waiting for you. Yeah, that's my saying.
I think that idea of it goes back to what we were saying before about don't go it alone. It's really, really important. If you're feeling like you're in the dark tunnel, it's really important, even though you might feel embarrassed or you might feel like it's hard to be vulnerable, or you have to show that you're strong for everybody else. The second you're in that dark tunnel, that's really when you're at risk. And so
Yeah.
it actually, I mean, I've gone through the experience of losing someone to suicide. And so I would say to anybody who's contemplating it, you have to think about, you have to stop for a moment and just visualize and imagine and conjure up the faces and the pain that you are going to cause in every single person that you love.
Yeah.
You are going to cause them so much pain. You have at least a small sense of duty to go and tell them. You have to go and tell them, this is how I feel, this is what I'm going to do, and give them a chance to say their piece. Because after you hear what they have to say, you might not be so much in such a dark tunnel. That might be exactly the light that you need to remind you that there is a way to get out.
See, I remember, I think it was my partner that told me, when I was really at my lowest, she turned to me, and not in a judgmental way, but in a really calm way. And she told me, I understand, this is when she was saying it, and she never understood mental health at the first. Which you get them people, but she basically turned around to me and said, yeah, you're in this situation now, Adam, but there are people out there who are in a much worse place. Ever since she told me that, I didn't know how to take that. And to be honest, I actually still don't know how to take it. But I'm not letting it beat me up or let it affect me. But with this dark tunnel, my partner was really low last week. I was just, I ignored my phone, I ignored Facebook for a lot, and I was just focusing on her. And I told her about the tunnel method, and she was reluctant to actually help herself. And I always said to her, I'm there. I'm here guiding you to the light. My hand is there waiting. All you have to do is one thing, and that is stand up. And I will speak to you and guide you to that light. And she did it.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the kind of thing that all of our young people with their developing brains need to hear too.
Yeah. Yeah, because
it's just, you know, that there's somebody standing there and they're reaching out their hand, right? And they're there. And that is the role of adults. The role of adults is to lead children to a place of illumination and security and hope.
But we always advise we can't do it for them. They have to stand up themselves, and they have to take that first step themselves. And either way, we're going to be right next to them, guiding them every step of the way until they are smiling again. Because even just a simple smile, whether it's a fake smile or even a real smile, still goes a long way. It really does. And I've learned that. And now, if you asked me 2 years ago, meditation, it helps, I would have just laughed at people. I said, that doesn't work. I'm not going to hell do that. But I can't end it off. Even just 10 minutes. And obviously, people's going to turn around saying, I haven't got time. I've got the kids. I've got cleaning to do and stuff. Now, when they're saying that, I've got kids to sort out, I've got cleaning to do, I've got cooking, I've got pegging, the washing out and all that, I just take that as just excuses. Because I've now learned, after watching inspiring videos, which I recommend, Jim Carrey, Dwayne Johnson, and quite a few others, they talk a lot of sense. They do. If you say you haven't got time, make time. I've done that.
Yeah, no, totally. You know, it's really interesting because, again, I wish all of our teenagers and our young people up to the age 24, 25 knew the neuroscience, because the neuroscience confirms, they've done extensive research, and the three most important things you can do for your brain, especially during the adolescent years, or especially when you're suffering a lot of stress, the 3 things that will totally change, heal, help, and de-stress your brain and therefore make you so much better in your life is meditation.
Yeah.
The other one is aerobic fitness. If you just get out there biking, running, skipping, if you can do aerobic fitness every week, it's unbelievable what it does for your brain and how it can take your stress levels right down. And then the third one is positivity. So, and I don't mean that in a simple sense. Sorry, okay, we just froze for a sec. The third thing being positivity or happiness. If you consciously choose happiness, there is an entire huge academic group at Harvard issues.
Yeah, we're having technical issues. We are.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just saying that, is it back? I was just saying the research into happiness and choosing positivity is really, it's game changing for your brain. It makes your brain way healthier, way less stressed out.
Oh my God.
Because the more you get stressed out in your wrong way or a good way.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't know. I'll put it over here, see what happens here. Is that better?
Is it better?
Yeah. I've removed the laptop, see what happens here. Now, obviously, we're coming to an end now, so we're going to wrap this up. Because I don't know if it's half an hour, 40 minutes I've got. But we're coming up to half an hour now. This what it is. Time flies when we speak the truth, when you're having fun. But it's more getting to know people and getting that message out, and that's what it's all about. But if you've got one, like, you know what, I'm actually going to come out and say it. How would you describe, when it comes on the mental health side, how would you describe the new normal coming into place?
Well, you know, I feel like because of the pandemic, I know it's awful and I'm not trying to minimize, but I feel like it's given us all a chance to stop. Everyone had to stop in the world and say, okay, just a second, what's the most important thing to me? What's the only thing that really matters when you get down to it? Your health and your mental health. So I think it's an opportunity for all of us to make sure we keep our communities close, even if this is a global community. You know, here we are, UK and Canada, and we just are totally connected, right?
Absolutely.
And I just think that we want to really figure out, do I want to spend so much time flying all around the world traveling? Do I want to be commuting in my car? Do I want my kids to be at school all day and I don't see them? Like, what is it exactly that life is all about? And how can I take this opportunity where the entire world has come to a shuddering stop to rethink and press reset and create the normal that I want? I'm tired of people telling me, this is okay, this is normal. It's okay to have things like police brutality. That's okay. It's okay to have racism. It's okay to abuse children. Not for me. That's not my normal. I'm choosing my own normal, separate from what society seems to deem okay, the people in power. It's like, if that's the way you want to treat people, fine, not me. I believe in protecting kids. I believe in a world where all races are equal. And I believe in a world where the police are raised up to be the most empathic and the most able to diffuse terrible situations, not cause them.
Yeah, absolutely. And mine will be, you keep listening to the news and they advise you to social distance. My advice, if you're living with mental health, back off the news, turn that television off, turn the radio off, whatever. Because I've never listened to social distancing. This ain't me going against the guidelines whatsoever. We've got Facebook, we've got Instagram, we've got Twitter, we've got LinkedIn, we've got Zoom, we've got StreamYard. I feel social connected. I have come across a few of the most powerful people when it comes to mental health. I've just been having a conversation about an hour ago with the director of a domestic abuse charity on LinkedIn, and we're actually planning to do a live video together, and I cannot wait for that whatsoever. So,
Great.
absolutely, and all these videos I do bring people on. They are going to be uploaded to Facebook. They're going to be uploaded to LinkedIn. They're even going to be uploaded to my YouTube channel, which I'm doing a little bit of self-promotion here. People should subscribe.
You gotta always get people to subscribe for your YouTube. That's the new normal of the YouTube. Don't worry about it.
Oh yes, but yeah, I'm glad to have you on, Jen. Yeah, I said Jen, you're Jennifer. Now I'm just saying Jen. I'm just coming out of anything today. I'm in one of the moods. I think the heat's got to me.
It's one of those names that takes many different forms, so don't worry about it. But yeah.
It's like my son Lucas. I've got people calling him Luca, Lucas, Luke.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
No, I know. Names are funny. Listen, I will send you some links if people want to read. I write a ton of articles on child abuse and on bullying and on what it does to brains and that kind of stuff. It's all on my website. So I'll send you a link and you can put it with when you send the video out. So if people want to reach me, they can, and there's a lot of resources for people.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'll even copy it into the description on the YouTube.
Okay.
Like even your website link. I'll do that.
Okay. I'll send it to you in case people can email me and so on and so forth. It's totally fine.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to stop this recording now. Where is it?